Okay. We are starting the Conservation Board meeting on Wednesday, October 12th. Very excited to introduce a new board member, Gretchen Wise. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for volunteering time for your community. We really, really, really appreciate it. You have anything you want to say?
Thanks for inviting me to be here, and I'm very excited to see what we can do.
Sweet. Well, we have an action-packed agenda. Not really. Today should be a little bit easy. So I've called the meeting to order. We always do a public comment period at the beginning of the meeting that gives people an opportunity if anybody has called in. This is that period, although I will say, because I can see Zoom, there is nobody else called in right now. And we are missing a board member, Pam, who may turn up in the middle of the meeting. Let's see. So the first agenda item was the approval of the minutes from September 14th meeting. That's linked to in the agenda.
Yeah.
Do you want me to pull it up on the screen, or can I just have a
quick formality just for future reference.
Mhm.
Does approving the minutes mean that every single thing we said in them we know to be true?
Yeah, to the best of our recollection, the purpose of approving the minutes is to as that the record is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that if boy, so if one of us told a lie during the meeting.
Oh, that's not exactly what I mean.
Yeah, I know that's not what you meant, but I'm trying to be, but yes, the idea is that the things in the minutes are accurate. Yes, that's why we.
Gretchen, for your reference, we had presentations from multiple folks last time, and I kind of took too many notes on the minutes, and I'm not exactly sure I got it all right. This is the reason I'm asking. And like some of them talked very fast.
Do you want to just I can share that on the screen, and we could just is there anything that you want to review that you think, because I did look over it, Lindsay. I mean, I would,
if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. We don't need to spend time on it, but
Use the notes from the electric bus, the EV bus.
Mhm.
I read over those.
all right.
Cool.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Great, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, it passes. We approve the minutes.
Great.
Great. Okay, so now we're at the fun part. Board procedures review, including handbook, file sharing, ex parte guidelines, etc. So now you get to hear me essentially blather about the different requirements of being on a board and how this works. And this is, Gretchen, just a review for your benefit, essentially, but also, it's helpful to, so if it's okay, I'm just gonna kind of launch into it. I'll probably share my screen a little bit just to show you a couple of things. And then if you would please, though, just any kind of clarifying questions. Like, no question is out of line here.
Absolutely. And I did read over those documents that were sent over,
Yeah.
and it seemed really in line with the two other boards at the hospital that I serve on.
Yeah. So that's good to know that I remember that from your, you're fairly familiar with board processes and that sort of thing. I'll just launch into that aspect actually to begin with. Then is the one difference maybe between being on maybe some other boards like nonprofit boards or boards like the hospital or thing, and a official city board, is that we have to follow sunshine law processes, which adds a whole nother slew of requirements onto how we interact. And so what that means is, and remember, I'm not a lawyer, but for some reason I like rules. The couple of things, rules of thumb to remember are, one, pay attention to the definition of a quorum. So right now, our board has 4 members. By next month, it'll have 5, and hopefully we can get a youth member on again and we'll have full be 6. If we have 4 members currently, then a quorum is 3, right? So that's why we could start the meeting with 3 of us here. If a quorum has conversations outside of the meeting, then that's a no-no. And those the definition of those conversations is really broad. So, for example, if I send an email to somebody on some topic that we're talking about, and I get a response back, and then I want to know what people think, so I send that to the group. The only reason I would send that to the group is to say, here's a conversation or communication I had. I'm going to put it into the official agenda for the next meeting, but here's something for you to read in preparation. It would not be proper to even respond beyond sure, something like that. You couldn't go into the topic. We can't start doing deliberation about things over email or really anywhere else. If we all find ourselves at the same event somewhere in town or anything, if there's a quorum or more, we cannot converse about those topics without noticing the public, and then with at least 3 days notice, and then getting together in a public place where the public can come and inspect our deliberation in real time. Okay, so you'll find that is unbelievably clunky. It's not the way that we're used to collaborating, and it can be really frustrating, but the benefit is public trust. So any interaction that we have is inspectable and readily available for somebody on any topic. So if they want to know if we considered X or what we did and all that kind of stuff, it's all available. Or specifically why we were thinking about things in a certain way, they can go and hear the conversation. So that's pretty important. And that bleeds into rules on our collaboration online. So we have a Google Drive folder, which, Gretchen, I think I made you an editor of now. That Drive folder is publicly available and linked to on the city website. I feel lucky that we can even have a Google Drive folder. I think that it's an incredibly important thing to have, a good collaboration tool like that. But with great power comes great responsibility. So similar to the email thing, we have a great place to put the record of everything that we're doing, including our collaboration documents and all that stuff. But if we start using some of the incredible Google features where we co-edit things and add comments and that sort of thing on Google Docs, that is ex parte. I mean, that is deliberation. That's considered deliberation. So that makes it really clunky. So if we get into a topic and we're starting to talk about something and say we're co-authoring something or doing something to move something forward, then we need to we can merge all of our input, but we have to do it in a public setting. So what that means practically is you don't put your edits onto our Google Drive until you're submitting them to be included as part of an agenda, right? Because we don't want to get in a situation where I'm not gonna beat that. You understand that. Okay, so that's Google Drive. So at Google Drive, email communications, notice of meetings, and one more topic. Oh, process flow. So this is one that we'll get into on our very next agenda item. But the way the process is supposed to work in terms of interaction with the city staff, and city commission is this. We are supposed to deliberate as an advisory board on things that we are either asked to do directly or things that we want to do that's in the purview of our bylaws. Okay. Then when we do that, most of our output comes in the form of recommendations to the commission. So if I'll give you a couple of examples from recent history. So there's stuff that we're asked. So for example, the city wanted to expand their green waste facility because they felt nervous about throwing away so much green waste that they were collecting, and they wanted higher capacity. And so they came to us, the conservation board, at the commission's behest, to get our approval, input, suggestions on doing a new green waste facility. We provided that input, then they came back with a final presentation, and we looked at that and said, yep, that looks like a great plan. And we we voted to recommend to the commission that they do that. So that's an example of us specifically being the commission's eyes and ears on conservation topics and looking specifically at city plans. So that's one thing. Another example is when we sent recommendations to the commission most recently on how to proceed given all this federal funding for electric vehicle infrastructure. That was unsolicited, meaning nobody at the commission or the city staff, called us and said, we need you to look at this specific thing. We instead, under the purview of our bylaws, said proactively, this is something that you should be doing. And so there's been several instances of that. I can give you an example of also what not to do, because we did a lot of that our first year as a conservation board. We didn't know really. Well, there's a lot of history in this town. So, and it depends on who's running the show too. But in this, at least right now, it seems like that they really don't want their advisory boards writing ordinances, right? So we have a dark sky ordinance that's on our books, night sky ordinance. It's desperately out of date because it references things like wattage of bulbs and all that stuff, which is irrelevant in the face of the change in technology between incandescents to LEDs. And so what we started doing as a board was literally rewriting the ordinances. We made some recommendations. We were moving and we were working really hard, and we had the city, the deputy planner at the time, who was great, came to one of the meetings and said, like, what are y'all, he said, what are y'all doing? You know, you really shouldn't be doing this. Like, this is something that city staff should be doing, because we, you know, one, we're the experts, and two, we just have, you know, way more depth and ability to review with the city lawyer and all that stuff. And so that was an example of what not to do. So on that one, we pivoted and ended up collecting our recommendations, which really were just an extension of the recommendations of the International Dark Sky Association, on changes and additions to make to the ordinance. And then the commission directed city staff to work on it. And so you can think, if you think about the way that works, then we recommend to the commission tells the city manager, hey, we want you to work on this. They put it in the strategic plan or whatever. And then city staffs appropriately, hopefully, and works on it. And then they come and just review that with us. Is this what does this, you know, just a final check, and we either recommend or don't recommend it to the commission. And you know, truthfully, even like in those kinds of situations, just to give you a sense of our, you know, power, we have no power. I mean, we really are just an advisory board, you know. And so, like, if the city came to us with their dark sky ordinance and they'd done a bunch of work, for example, and we were like, nah, that's not really what we wanted. We want this, and this change. City staff could still absolutely take that to the commission and say, well, they said, you know, and they would have to include that we didn't recommend it, but they could say, we think you should do it anyway. I think I covered the 3 or 4 different scenarios. And if you think about our work, there's probably a couple of ways. There's probably more things we could look at, but those are sort of that's supposed to be the flow. We're not really supposed to bother city staff. We've been told that very clearly. I think that's a really hard one, because when you ask questions about if something's a problem or not, hey, Pam, just for the record, Pam joined the meeting, so you can log that in the minutes. Pam, I'm just doing the really, really like boring part, which is the staff, the board processes spiel for Gretchen.
Welcome, Gretchen. And I don't know when an appropriate time to bring this up is, but I had some interesting updates for you guys, having spoken to a city commissioner recently. So
good. Okay. Well, if we want to do that, if you want to have some updates on one of our topics, I think as long as it's on the agenda items, that's great. We could go. But we have 2 agenda items after this. The next one is the EV, the revisit of the EV thing from last week, or last month rather, and then water conservation topics. So if there's input on one of those agenda topics, absolutely. Anyway, so just to round this out, we're not supposed to bother the city staff. If we want to use city staff time to go do research projects and things like that, I think that that's a very appropriate request of the commission. So and while I think you'll see that even that process is a little broken right now, that is the official process right now. But those are guidelines, not rules. How about we say it that way? Okay. On just board process stuff, Pam, I know you jumped in a little late, so you didn't, but I talked about the Google Drive. I talked about, sunshine laws and ex parte communications and all that stuff. I think everything's fairly well covered. But Lindsay, do you have anything to add on the topic? Pam, is there anything that came with you coming on board that felt
I guess just one quick thing to add. We're in discussions like as a board trying to figure out how to get assignments from the commission, or like
Yes.
where to put our work and time effectively.
Yes. Yes, I think that's a great point. I think what I presented as the process is our understanding of, and what we've been told by commissioners and by city staff and Michael Cardos before he died, on how it's supposed to work. I think there's been some question about whether that's the way we should proceed. So there's some of that, which I think is useful, especially in light of the next couple of topics that we have for the meeting. Any other, though, just the really boring stuff? Oh, meeting minutes, right? Is there anything like we have to have meeting minutes? So Gretchen, if you want to, but actually, you know what, I'm just going to say, like, if there's any role you want on this board, if you want chair, like,
No, thank you.
I mean, I'm serious. Like, I just want to, I think I want to express, just at least from my perspective, how much, like, it just doesn't, like, roles, we have jobs we need to get done. We need to record meeting minutes. We technically have to have just a vice chair and a chair, but and then we just kind of float the role of note taker. We try to build our processes very efficiently so that we don't have extra work outside of meetings as much as possible, except for work that we like to do. So, for example, Lindsay's over there trying to take notes on what we're saying so that we don't have to do that, like the world's most boring podcast, and listen to this meeting again just to get notes together, right? That kind of thing. Anyway, I'm not going to belabor this anymore. Do you have any other questions, Gretchen? This is really for you.
Nope, it all sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. And do you want me to cover motions and
I don't think so.
okay. Yeah, the only thing that for me is a little weird is motions. You don't have to agree with something to make a motion, right? So, I mean, that's really important to move things along. You can make a motion for something and then vote against it. I just want to make sure that's clear. You're not saying that you vote for something by making a motion for something, and then you have to have a motion. You have to have a second to put it on the table, and then typically, if you want discussion around something, you make the motion and the seconded, and then there's public discussion about it, and then we always give the public a chance to join in and provide input before we do a vote. Okay.
Understood.
All right. Anything else on this topic? Shall we move on? Okay. All right, so the next topic on the agenda is summary and discussion of communication with commission and city staff since last meeting regarding letter on EV infrastructure. I have only one thing I wanted to share, which was the back and forth. I think you were copied on the back and forth with commission and city staff on sort of the requested action from the letter. But I thought I would pull that up and sort of enter that into the conversation. Let's see if I can pull that up and share it. Okay. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to change the font, so it's going to be absurdly small, but I can read it. Okay, so I'll just go all the way back. I sent to the city commission the letter that we had from the last meeting with some details on what we wanted to do. There were some motions related to getting that onto the agenda, but Lisa and Melissa, I think the board chair Newts decided that they got, after some additional information, that they think that moving it to October 4th would be best. I noticed that it wasn't on the October 4th agenda, so I asked for an update on status. Lisa Lowy, who's the interim city manager right now, said that they were actually really interested in working with business owners and seeing about doing this downtown per our recommendation. They correctly identified that there was a big pull from Northwestern Energy that's a lot of draw, and they were concerned about carving off city parking and city streets to do this. And they have been working on a staff recommendation for where to do this downtown. Also, they are incredibly distracted with the city manager hiring process. I just want to make this clear. They have a lot on their plate. I thanked her for her feedback and really, and I'll just say this, I really value that she sent that, because it let us know where they were. And I just clarified that we weren't actually asking them to locate the chargers on city property, that the strategy there was to have the commission recommend, write a letter to DEQ, National Highway Transportation, or National Highway and Transportation Safety Administration, and any other bidding companies, that we would really look favorably, we want them to look favorably on downtown projects, and that we hadn't actually asked for the city staff to do that. And I just, the bolds are the ones I want to point out. This request is not directed at our busy city staff at all. I did ask for in that email if there was any other commissioners that were going to make a motion to add it to one of the next two commission meetings. And that didn't, I don't think that happened. So I did offer that there were some interesting places to approach to see if they would be interested in this project, including the Lincoln School, American Bank, the Depot Center, and TJ's, and really anybody else that's interested in the downtown area. And that I was doing some of this work not as the Conservation Board member, Michael DeChellis, but more as just concerned citizen to try to create some shovel-ready projects around town that met the intent of the letter that we signed and that the LBID signed, and hopefully the commission would sign. So that's the kind of sorry for the eye chart there, but that's kind of I just wanted to present that as my latest update. Now I'll stop talking so much. That's all I have to offer as where we are on that. Any thoughts or questions? Is there something, any clarifying?
So it hasn't got, we didn't get a response then, right? It hasn't been put on an agenda, that it's not going to be considered anytime soon.
Right. Now I'm not sure that no response is a bad thing, because we have to be clear, we just went over sunshine laws and all that stuff, that what they can say on a collaborative email chain like that is very limited.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I haven't seen it show up on any agenda, on any published agendas yet for any of the city commission meetings so far. But truthfully, I haven't been looking. I might be on an agenda now. I know that they've been really distracted, as they should be, and focused on the city manager hiring process. But obviously this felt like a pretty timely letter, or we wouldn't have wasted their time with the letter. So that's where we are. Pam, did you, in this recorded public setting, did you want to discuss any insights that you had?
Not specifically on like the letter, except that it was reiterated to me that this month in particular, they were really busy with the city manager stuff. And I think that the fact that it's just there and already in front of them is good, but it might be worth revisiting when they have more time to get to it. I don't know, that's not really helpful, but yeah.
Well, it might be if you think there's like, I mean, look, as I would be happy to squeak the wheel, so to speak, in 2 weeks or something. I mean, if there's a time frame that you think, gosh, I love to do items, right? So for me, like if I put a to-do item on my calendar in 2.5 weeks that says send this again, is that the most helpful thing to do?
The impression I got is that the most helpful thing might be to reach out to one independent, or maybe send individual emails to a couple, 2 or 3 city commissioners, and see if any of them can give you more feedback on when, barring any like announcements on hiring. I don't know if they have a date set on.
Yeah. Okay.
You've done that already.
Yeah, I had the same sense, so I appreciate that. Yep. So let's see. Well, here's another question. Am I the best ambassador?
I think on that particular topic, you seem to have the broadest knowledge base on it. Like as far as how the contracting process goes? Like, yes, I think so, but
Well, let me be more specific. When it comes to a process of uh, shopping this letter around to get the attention that it needs. Specifically, I mean, because when it comes to, yes, when it like if I guess if the question comes to, we need to convince a commissioner or two to put this on the agenda, and then those commissioners are motivated by knowledge on the subject, then yes, I hear you. But I'm not sure that's what's required here. I mean, if I think what I'm trying to get at is
I'm trying to pull up the letter because for whatever reason, I can't.
yeah, that's fine. I can also pull it.
I just got the impression that they're kind of tabling everything that's not of immediate concern for at least this month or so.
Okay.
But if we wanted to get a better sense of when is appropriate and a timeline, it might be easiest to just work through a commissioner or two to say, hey, can you keep us in the
Got
loop on when is a good time? Because we don't have a commissioner that sits in on this board. That's helpful.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So, I think then I'll take this as I have a commissioner in mind. And I'll move forward with that, and I'll let y'all know if I hear anything back on that. And I really do understand. I think you know what, I mean, Lindsay, I saw you at that conference the other day, and I mean, we weren't a quorum or anything, but I was expressing some frustration, but I'm actually going to just do it here too, because I think it's important. We are a volunteer advisory board. We don't have to give up our time to do this kind of thing. And I think it's important as a show of support of advisory boards that when the commission gets advice, which doesn't come more than like once every 9 months or something, that they have a commitment to bringing that advice into the agenda as soon as they can, and communicating back to keep the advisory boards motivated to continue their good work, that to keep them, aware of when that might happen, so that they don't give the impression that they're overwhelmed and don't care, which was the initial impression that I got, which would be a really unfair characterization of the good work that they're doing too, right? Like so it's a question of like, I think there are some really simple things that the commission could do related to being committed to hearing things within a reasonable amount of time when they come up, and B, communicating that back to the advisory boards in an open and thoughtful way. And so if y'all do talk to commissioners, giving them that feedback, I'm not saying that they need, I'm not saying they need to drop everything and listen to the things that we want to say at all. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm also saying I really appreciate everything that they're doing for the community. I don't think that commissioners get paid even close to enough to do all the things that they do. And boy, do they have to take a lot of heat when they're just trying to do what's best for their community. But in terms of the way that impacts advisory boards and the other work that's going around, focusing on the process being something that we can rely on would be really helpful. And so I think that feedback goes into probably our next agenda item, like how are we going to approach different topics around water conservation? What's our strategy there? Especially considering how long it seems to take to get anything to come up on the commission's agenda right now. That's all I have to say about that. Any other? You're on mute, Pam.
No, I think that since I've been on this board, that's kind of been the theme, is waiting for direction from the city. So it's a little, hard to know where to put our energy.
I guess a follow-up to that I've been thinking about is, do our bylaws state that we have monthly meetings?
Mhm.
Okay. I was just curious, like, if there are moments when we feel like we don't have an assignment and we're not being heard, do bi-monthly meetings or something make more sense, but okay, thanks.
Yep. I think that's a good idea.
Can we change our bylaws? Or does the commission have to approve it?
The commission has to change bylaws.
Okay. Maybe that would get their attention. We could try that in a less busy time. Like, I do have sympathy for sure for overworked people, 100%, but
Yeah, I would hate to give the impression that we don't have gratitude for the things that they do. That's for sure. The challenge for me is, how do you build processes that just an 80-20 rule, right? Just you can get 80% of the benefit by doing 20% of the process work, and that just communicates and motivates with clear guidelines and gratitude back to city advisory board members who are volunteering all their time. And so how do we lead? I always think about, when I'm in organizations, how do I lead from the bottom, lead from behind, so to speak. And I think communicating very clearly when things are motivating and not motivating is actually a really helpful thing. But not just complaining, actually offering solutions. But we're really digressing now.
great. Should we talk about water conservation?
Yes, that's what I want to do.
Cool. Launch in.
Can I hand it over? Pam, you just had the best list. Can we just start with that?
I saw that you very directly typed up the list
That you rattled off your noggin?
I don't, hang on, let me look at the agenda. I can't remember what I sent you as a brainstorming list. Where's the agenda?
Here, I can pull that
Sorry,
up.
the computer is like painfully slow, and I'm trying to pull up too many things at once and losing track of what's what now.
I'll share that list, and then you can Doop-a-doop-a-doo. There we go. So
So basically, when prompted with the question of what interests me in conservation in terms of city, outside of like we had conversations about an energy action plan and things of that scale, and went through the same motions with we don't have feedback from the city on how to go about that. I was thinking outside the box. Water conservation came to mind, and just things I've seen or heard of in other cities. This was like a super just what popped into my head list. That's really all this is. So I can just read that off. That's helpful. Like I think Bozeman even recently implemented some lawn watering and just city water use guidelines for residents, and probably city lawns as well. In terms of, can you guys hear me?
oh yeah, definitely.
What else did I have on there? Appropriately routing stormwater. I know the city has like one treated stormwater sewer, but just I think that came to mind because the city already has it on their plate, knowing they have to. And I might be wrong on this. Is it 10,000 residents? We have to treat all the stormwater,
Yeah, I think that's the number.
something like that. So that's already on their radar, like because the DEQ is going to mandate that. So I think they're already budgeting infrastructure budgets and stuff for treating some of our water runoff. But I was just trying to think of like, are there ways that we can incentivize? Some of this might be covered in the growth policy, and I didn't go through it and look back, but like incentivize like green space over impermeable surfaces, just to mitigate that stormwater runoff. And when we do have to treat it, mitigate the amount we have to treat, which would tie back into conservation of energy and not spending as much money and time treating unnecessary water that could just percolate down through green surfaces. And that made me think of green stormwater infrastructure. I've seen this in other cities where they have, and I can't think of what they're called, but they're basically like water catchment, like landscaping features that filter the water like a natural ecosystem would, as opposed to running it into a storm sewer and treating it mechanically. So if the city were going to be improving something somewhere, if they could consider the feasibility of something like that in their infrastructure, as opposed to just a regular old lawn or something. If it's a, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Has anyone else seen these? They're like basically man-made things that are made to reenact like water infiltration into soil and natural cleaning processes.
Yeah. I saw one and I was shocked in where I grew up, which was south of Houston and Clear Lake. There was I'm going to try to pull up the satellite of it. And hopefully not stop all my video while I do it. They had a really good example of that. And I was talking to, I remember like before the conservation board got started, I was talking to Michael Cardus and to the folks at Paradise Permaculture. a little bit, and they were talking about how amazing it would be to, create essentially that, just what you're saying, Pam, like a catchment like park. And then if if you tie that into your storm sewer plan, it turns out you can get a lot of benefit because of the size of the stormwater that you have to manage. So like, and this gets into the weeds, but it's actually really important, where like the details are, you have like a certain amount of stormwater you're supposed to be able to manage, like inches per hour or something like that of rain. And then you can either basically make all the drains work so that they can all handle that capacity in real time, or you can make much smaller capacity, and sometimes like half, like a significantly lower infrastructure investment, if you have one of these catchment areas that you're talking about, because it starts filling up with water, and then you have the stormwater runoff coming off of it, but it's a smaller amount. But that's okay, because you can still, it's like the bucket with the hole in it, right? Like, so you can, if you put a nice big hole in the bucket, in this case, the big hole costs a lot of money because it's lots of infrastructure. But if you put a tiny hole in the bucket continues to fill up, but as long as the bucket's big enough to handle, X number of inches per 24 hours or whatever the requirement is, it can fill all the way up, and then hopefully the storm passes and it just slowly drains using the small hole.
I think you're actually talking about separate, but also an existing thing. Maybe not, but I think in the South there is a lot of water actual catchment facilities. But sorry, my cat just leapt over me. Like they have to have water catchment systems just to manage water. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think some of the cities down there, they obviously get more rain events than we do. But one of the examples I'm thinking of was actually in Seattle. Like they have, I should look up the project specifically that made me think of this, but it was water that I don't think needed to be treated at all as stormwater, because of it was basically running through like a series of features that were made to like that had like things growing in them, like it had like soil and wetland type features that were man-made, but then they had natural like plants and vegetation stuff growing, and so that was like a natural filtration system so that they didn't then have to treat all that. Or is that the same thing you're talking about?
No, actually, you know what? I think that's a different but like complementary thing, that I think we're talking about different things than but they're both awesome. Basically.
Yeah.
Right? Because the thing I was talking about was more like, creating these like sort of a green space that really is just it's just a pond. It's a bucket, right? It's a thing that fills up with water to hold water so that the system can handle it. But you're talking about, there was a proposal here at the, I live right off the lagoon. That's why I'm pointing there. There's a proposal at the lagoon to put bioswales in at the, I think Shannon Holmes worked on that, to get bioswales in at Fleshman's Creek, which were they're essentially tubes with like a certain size gravel in them that filters out the silt and works with the beaver dams in there already, and keeps silt from re-entering the lagoon. And then they were going to put floating bio islands in the lagoon that they're like these floating islands with a bunch of like a really thoughtful combination of algae and all kinds. I don't actually, there's like 4 or 5 different plant species they put in there that help clean up the lagoon, and they just kind of float out there, and you could even walk out, and it makes it into kind of a park feature. And that proposal, you just reminded me, even though I kind of forget sometimes, that proposal was one that the city actually set money aside for. There's like $120,000, I think, set aside for that project. And that was there was a strategy associated with that, because the idea was then to go apply to the EPA or somebody to get the lagoon dredged again, because it's starting to fill up with silt. And then that system that's very similar to the one you're describing was sort of the thing that would say, look, we need this money to go and do this, but here's what we're putting in place in order to make it happen, so you don't have to do it again. Yeah, Gretchen, what was that? You got something?
Michael, I do have to step away for a couple of minutes here.
Cool. Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. We'll just log that, and we'll see you in a bit.
Yeah, I think that's more in tune with what I was.
Yeah.
thinking. Those catchment systems I've heard of, and I think that's more of a southern or wetter place thing, where they have like large rainfalls that happen, and they have to deal with like the system being overwhelmed, and then they can slow down the treatment system,
Yeah.
which makes sense. And
Well, but I was surprised to hear Michael Cardew talking about that so positively. I think that it sounds like there is some opportunity at the city level to address things that way, and that there's some economic benefit to the capacity project, basically, that you referred to, that 10,000 person thing.
well, I'm thinking at a minimum, it would reduce the city's energy needs to treat whatever water we do have to treat, if we can reduce the storm water going in the first place. So yeah, anyways, just to
So I wonder if there's, like, on this topic, I wonder if there's any like grant opportunities for us to go get, in order to kind of specifically look at the plans from this lens. I mean, I'm just thinking about like, what do we do as a board to affect that, instead of, I mean, we can just say, hey, please consider this. I mean, that is one approach, but I was just thinking about, like, I mean, I know some engineers that do like really big water management projects that would absolutely know who to talk to do some design on stuff like that. I mean, I'm just wondering if there are any grant applications that we could help facilitate as a board to bring some of those experts to bear, to look at some of that planning. Because it'd be so neat to have like a project come out of it, where we partner with, like, it's like Paradise Permaculture, and ask them to come in and design a permaculture landscape, in the place that makes sense in order for this new capacity, and that this capacity needs, that's also city property. I mean, but the only way to know what that is to have somebody who really knows what they're doing look at it. And there are people in the city that know. I don't mean to imply that our city engineers don't, but they, like, do they have enough time to look at this specifically with this lens?
Well, I don't know that it would be the city engineers doing it. I would be curious to look back into, like, I remember the growth policy going into something with impermeable surfaces and like encouraging more green space and things like that. And there might be like some things in there, I'd have to look at it again, that already call for these things, and maybe we could just, I don't know, not add to it, but like bring to their attention way like collaborations that can be done to further things that are already mentioned in the growth policy, if they are. Like bring suggestions to them on ways that they could implement some of those things that are recommended.
Yeah.
I don't know that we would want the city to be doing it, but then they could, if they were gonna put an improvement in a park or something, then they could say we could, maybe we should first look at ways to improve our green stormwater treatment while we're doing this other improvement, and our bidding process should include engineering firms that do that work. Or I don't know how that goes.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
something along
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I'm perusing actually the EPA's website right now. They have a handbook that says Green Infrastructure in Parks, a guide to collaboration, funding, and community engagement. So maybe thing in there.
Drop, I'll add that to the.
Yeah,
minute.
drop that in the minutes so we could all then review it, and if we want to look at how to do things on that.
Guide to in park.
It's a Green Infrastructure in Parks, colon. A guide to collaboration, funding, community engagement.
Okay, it's an EPA.
Yeah, I just Googled green stormwater treatment or something like that, and it came up.
Awesome. Do we have other thoughts on this piece? I did a little bit of research on the gray water stuff and thought of some questions there. Yeah.
Well, I think so. I just want to know just on that piece, because I think, let me just to kind of, what are we doing right now, right? So we're kind of just looking at different topics, and we're thinking about just doing like the walk that trail by, half a mile, so to speak, and see what would that path look like if we were to engage in that as a board right now. What kind of, it might be the kind of impact, and then how would, like, how easy or hard would that be? And so did we kind of answer those on the general topic, I guess, of the water, what are we going to call it, Pam? Maybe like water catchment and water, not catchment's so dull. You're on mute again.
Collection though, right?
Yeah, but water treatment.
Pam, are you talking to us?
You're on mute.
Doing that to myself. I think I had seen a term like green stormwater infrastructure.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. So stormwater in general, but green infrastructure related to it. That's it. So, and then I think we had a couple of strategies that already come out. One was the idea of making a what would initially probably be a letter that says, here are the growth policy sort of topics that we think could be improved or affected by projects in this space. And can you, when considering projects either to directly increase stormwater or to do major work on a park or add a new neighborhood. I think that's another piece that I think we really need to make sure we always remember. There's new neighborhood plans coming in all the time. Like, are they, did they consider, right? What's the list of things that we want them to have considered? And then adding some of the green stormwater infrastructure questions to that, to those, maybe those three processes. Is that?
I'm going to simplify my to-do list in that regard down to like just looking through the growth policy and seeing where recommendations were put in there to like improve permeability and, you know, green infrastructure, and just see if there's complementary like EPA programs that exist that we might bring to their attention, maybe even as simple as that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great first step, because then we're not making any recommendations on processes. We're just saying like, look at this, and then
maybe you can adopt this already existing.
Well, and yeah, and I like that it's an EPA thing, because then there's often ways to get money associated. You know, I mean, there might be other grant, like, and I think that's the other piece, that's just the context, or the sort of the holistic context of our sort of thing right now, is that anything we're asking for is frankly just asking of like a deeply overburdened city staff who's just too small to be doing all the things that we're trying to do sometimes. And so anything that has opportunities for grants or for community engagement and funding, that's outside of just asking city staff to do everything.
Is there ways that it was brought to my attention that like not every recommendation has to go before the board for approval, but maybe we can email things to city commissioners and they can recommend that we speak to somebody on the planning board, or we speak to somebody, or not on the planning board, but like they can kind of pass along what we're working on to other city staff as they see appropriate, and say, why don't you work with this person and come back to us when you landed on something, so we can go to them and say, are there other people that might be worth talking to as we're thinking about ideas in the, maybe it's the public works department, maybe it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we'll have to table this a little bit to see. I know that the old city manager was pretty direct about needing all requests to go through him, even coming from the commission, that the commission doesn't email city staff on the reg, that instead that the communication goes through. And I really get that, right? Like, because when you have a bunch of people that are just, that you're trying to manage their time so that they can have normal lives, it's best that you create the priorities and filter. And that was his intention. It'll be interesting to see what the expectations of the next city manager are. So that is, yeah, we'll see. But I mean, that's really what we need. I mean, it's funny because on all these types of things, you know, I mean, having somebody like I don't think that we could ask, but boy, it'd be really nice to have Shannon Holmes in every single one of these meetings. Because he could, he could tell us what's a reasonable thing to do and what's not, or a city planner or somebody. So, okay, so do we go down that path? I just I think we should cover the other things, but is that so? So I think what we said on that was that, Pam, I'm just trying to mirror back what you said, so we can move on. That we could do a little bit of homework on growth policy and try to Venn diagram that with EPA recommendations and see what pops up.
Yeah, and I'll take that on. I'll do that. I mean, I can look through our growth policy and see where there's things that we might be able to match with it.
Okay, and do you want to just, okay, so do you want to just put an agenda item for the next meeting to revisit that specifically?
Sure.
Okay, and then Lindsay, do you want to talk about, did you say gray water?
Yes, that was a topic that Pam suggested. So I just looked at what the state rule is, and it looks like gray water reuse within a building can happen without review. And then pretty much the only other use can be irrigation. And it needs to be piped below the surface. Yep. I thought there was one other thing. So, and then I also looked at a story in Colorado. So Colorado and a lot of the Western states passed, like legalized gray water use in 2013. And so there was a story about, cities actually need to adopt resolutions to allow gray water in the city or county, rather, excuse me, the county, on top of the state rule, because I think it's those health departments that are approving permits. So I was the questions I'd like to answer at, like, has Park County adopted the code? And are there additional ordinances in the city and potential low-hanging fruit that some counties in Colorado have allowed for? And their rule may be totally different than ours, so this might not be possible here, but laundry to landscape systems have been legalized, although not a single permit has been issued, which is really interesting to kind of look at why that's going. It's because there's not enough staff to approve the systems. And then a second low-hanging fruit might be laundry to holding tank that then could be used in toilet flushing. And all of that is only for new builds. It's like absolutely not possible, they're saying, to have that human power to approve retrofitting current buildings, is what I was kind of reading. So this is, and then there's specific guidelines in our state for subdivisions. So we could look at what those are and thinking about our new neighborhoods with the growth policy too. I didn't think it would be so hard to use gray water, but it's a big public health risk, I guess. That's all I got for that. I could try to do the same thing Pam is, to try to match up, at least for new builds, if there's an opportunity there, but I'm not super hopeful.
I think the biggest question there is what's the relevant governing authority for that? Specifically in Montana anyway, building codes are controlled by the state legislature at the state level. And so and they have taken away most local jurisdiction on being able to add additional requirements on building codes. So for example, we could not go and require a higher or different R value than the IRC, the IBC, International Building Codes, that are adopted by the state legislature in Livingston, like if that was something that we just wanted to do. We don't have that authority anymore. That's been taken away from locals. So I'd just be curious, like what are our options if we feel like gray water promotion is something that we want to really tackle?
What I'm hearing from Lindsay is that maybe we can't add additional restrictions, but if there's restrictions in place that don't need to be, we could recommend that they're re-looked at, or something along those lines, like looking at any restrictions that might already be written in.
I didn't check. That's true. I didn't check it'd be interesting to check our ordinance. See if gray water's mentioned anywhere in city ordinance.
I tried to search for it and I couldn't find it, but that's not to say it's not there.
It probably isn't.
We probably just default to whatever the state says.
Well, it's my impression too that city ordinance can be more strict than state, but it can't be less, right?
I don't know if that's right.
Well, that's how state law is to federal.
Yeah, but
Regulation.
but it's not really. That is the way it is because it's constitutionally and intentionally it's usually that the federal government has these roles and then everything else is by the power of the states, but that's not the way it has to run in the states. Like, and specifically, like for example, like we can't create our own as a gateway community if we want, who is trying to keep up infrastructure for a ridiculous influx of tourists, for example. We cannot do there is a special carve out for Gardner size communities to do a local consumption tax and local sales tax in order to help support local services that have to be larger because of all these people. We don't even have that capability here. Like there's a lot of things that we cannot do. We simply cannot do. It's been either explicitly taken away from us or the state does that stuff already. So maybe this is a point of research. It's not that hard to find. I was just looking actually at some of this stuff in our code, the city code. I imagine that there's a lot of reference to state level stuff. I'll say that.
Yeah, they definitely have imposed additional restrictions on what municipalities can and can't impose. Taxes being one.
So I'm just saying, I don't know if that's the case here, Lindsay, but it's a reality, and there's a lot of precedent for being more restrictive on the local level.
One other opportunity then, the best practices that Pam brought up, I looked over the Bozeman website too, and they have like incentive programs, rebates. You can just go pick up like a low flow shower head. You can get a free sprinkler system assessment. They have smart planting guides. So I don't know what our role might be there of increasing just like access to resources. Obviously, there's some funding to consider with incentive programs, but I don't know, any thoughts there about what might become an agenda item?
I will say I did get a Northwestern Energy audit. And that when they came in to do that audit, it was done by a third party, and I am trying to remember their name. I can pull it up. But it was, free, right? And so they came in, but that was one of the first things they did was they did the blower door test. So that was cool. But they also did, they went to all of my fixtures and just offered low flow fixtures for all my water fixtures. So I found that interesting because it was Northwestern Energy who doesn't sell us our water, but as part of that comprehensive energy audit, they were happy to go through and install low flow aerators on all of our faucets for free. So that's one option. I don't know, but I don't know how applicable that program is, because I've heard that it's hard to get, even though I didn't have much trouble doing it.
We called and they showed up like the following week. It was pretty easy. But
Yeah.
there might be other incentive programs out there too, so that might just be another thing to research, is what incentive programs exist that we can connect citizens with. And maybe the Public Works Department can just put that in like their annual newsletter or something.
Well, or maybe we can find that out and then literally just write a letter to the Livingston Enterprises, the Conservation Board, and say, hey, public service announcement, here are the things, go get an energy audit. You can do this. Which is another tool that we didn't talk about, but I mean, we are a city board. We can do that kind of thing. We don't have to get permission. It's in our bylaws, for crying out loud. We're supposed to promote.
Right. In the paper, like have an ad type thing or what?
I mean, we could do, the paper loves local content. I'm sure that if we had, a nice letter, that they would publish it. Either an LTE or even a guest editorial, right? That's what they call
Let's also get it to PCEC so people who can't pay for the newspaper can also see it on social media. I may or may not be in that group, but
Ditto.
Yeah, I
Right.
find, yeah, I won't, yeah. I won't editorialize about the editorial, but I like our paper a lot. Gretchen, any thoughts there? I know you've been.
No, that sounds good. And that sounds like something I might be able to help with. I've been trying to figure out how I can jump in here for next meeting to be able to contribute more. And that's definitely something I can start researching.
Glad you used the word more there, because we've been meaning to talk to you about your lack of contribution since you joined the board, Just kidding. I love that you're jumping in. Thank you. I think the strategy sounds good. So do we feel good? Did we, like, in terms of a couple of actions on that topic?
yeah. And I
Like-
can propose one more agenda item for a future meeting, which is, I have heard that front yard gardens are not allowed in our city, and I want to figure out if that's true.
Oh, I love that topic.
Too. I was like, there will be a food thing I can do on this board.
I
Start with that.
If that's true, it's not enforced. So
I know, right? So it's like, should I draw? attention to
would
it?
love to encourage, I'd love to flip that on its now we're just on a tire. But for me, it'd be wonderful to talk. It'd be nice to put an agenda item on a future meeting that we could talk with public input on, that would involve considering whether we should have gardens in the boulevard, in the city's right away, as not just allowed but encouraged.
allowed might just be a first step.
Yes. Okay. I have a couple water things. Something that happened last month. Y'all know I'm on the board of the Lincoln School, and I'm the treasurer there, which means I watch the money. And the Lincoln School is a large building downtown. It is owned by a nonprofit foundation, and its mission is to be a place where tenants can occupy the different rooms, and we try to provide them very low market rent for and provide an incubator of sorts for nonprofits, artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, startups, that kind of thing. I'm just giving that background because this is a recorded public meeting and I want people to have context if they're listening. So, but our boiler started gushing water, and I'll just pull that up. I think in a matter of, so due to that, right? Due to that event, the bill that we got was absolutely insane for water. Sewer actually it's kind of an interesting aspect if you all have bills from the city, that sewer takes I'm sorry, I'm multitasking here. So in that bill, and I'm not going to share the bill on the public forum, but I'll just say that the water for that was a lot. It was an accidental thing. The boiler was gushing water, but we had many thousands of gallons. Many, upsettingly many. The water bill was huge. The sewer bill was over twice that. So if you ever look at your breakdown, it's just interesting. Yeah, I think, and this is what all the citizens of our city are seeing when they see their bill, that the water is costing not much, that the sewer bill is costing a lot. And so, in terms of the economic aspect, that's what people will see. But it just occurred to me that we didn't get told that this was happening. Like, we just got the bill. And so I was wondering if there was a way to get ahead of large leaks like that. Like, when things happen, it feels like it's an exception. I mean, this, for example, this event, probably, let's see, I can tell you.
I might have some insight on this. Similar thing happened to a friend of ours who was out of town, and several toilets basically put a water softener in, and all of the buildup that caused the toilets to keep running, and he was out of town, and it was an astronomical water bill. But recently heard Shannon Holmes say that the city is working on updating their, I believe this is what I heard, don't quote me on this, but it was something to the effect of their water meters, I think, updating water meters, and that they're actually waiting due to the computer chip shortage on getting those in. So that might already be on their radar, to have updated water meters that could give more real-time data and alert the system if something seems like way outside the normal.
Yeah, so you got where I was going with that. That's exactly it, right? Because I mean, when events like that happen, you usually can call and get them. They will forgive parts of the, if there's something big, that is a procedure, and they'll do that because they understand that things happen. But I mean, I like for the Lincoln School, I can tell you with authority that we used our entire water consumption for a year in like half a month. I mean, that was like, it would have been so nice to know that was happening. And that's a big number.
I might encourage you as a just private citizen even to reach out to our public works department and see what the status of that is, because I'm fairly certain he said something about updating water meters and there was just a delay due to computer chip shortage. So I'd be curious to know where the planning or I mean the Public Works Department is at on that, or what insight they have on whether a system could be put in place.
Awesome. Okay, so we don't need to belabor that too much. I will I'll do more investigation on that. Good. One more related to water. Oh, it was a general, it's just a general note that another way of looking at this, if we kind of flip the process on its head, and it's similar, Pam, to kind of what you were talking about, where we're just perusing the growth policy, is I think we actually, I was looking at the review process that they just did on this latest neighborhood proposal. And both when you get a building permit, but also when you submit a neighborhood plan, there aren't a lot of extra questions that express our growth policy in that review process. And so I was wondering, both in water conservation, but frankly, other topics as well, if as a future agenda item, we thought if it would be useful to ask, like, either somebody from the planning board or from the zoning commission to come to our meeting and help build a strategy around, maybe there's a proposal to add to the questions that are asked when a neighborhood plan or a building permit is submitted. And I think that could be a really fruitful question or fruitful discussion, because I'm imagining it could be things like, I'm just going to rattle off things that I know are in line with our growth policy, but did you consider with this neighborhood not putting any gas infrastructure in? Did you consider with this neighborhood putting in a green stormwater infrastructure field, or something, or incorporate green stormwater runoff in your park space, green space that's part of this planned neighborhood? Did you consider, say you were doing a building permit, did you consider using, we really specific, did you consider putting in low flow, fixtures as a plumbing permit?
Yeah, did you consider multimodal mobility, because I know that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Did we have a new planning director?
We do have, there's somebody starting in city planning. I'm not sure what their title is going to be, but they're starting next month. I think there's someone who's finally going to pick up the dark sky thing and move it across the finish line. Is something a little bird told me. And then, but they'll show up with, and have maybe more capacity to look at that kind of thing.
Yeah, that seems like the type of person that might be worth working with on those things, if given permission by our maybe new city manager or city commission.
Yeah. So, that was all I had. We're moving on, and it's 7:15, so I want to be cognizant, and I think we have a bunch of actions take away from this. So let's see, what do we got here?
Public comment period.
Well, so do we feel, have we kind of beat this one to death here? We feel like we have some, and then do we want to, I assume, Lindsay, you were typing down some of the agenda items that we were.
I bolded them, yeah.
Thank you so much. So I'll look at them.
And please, yeah, correct if I didn't get them right.
Yeah, because it's in terms of like agenda items. We could keep working this. I actually kind of like the idea of doing another one on this stuff. As a way to also just maybe introduce the process to another board member. Oh, that's another thing. Board member applications are open. So if you know people that you'd like to encourage to apply, please do. I think we have 2 applications so far, or 1 and maybe 1 on the way. But I have some maybe some suggestions for agenda items, but honestly, I didn't prepare them well enough before this meeting, so I could. What do y'all want to do?
Can you just send a proposed one and we say yay or nay before the next meeting?
Nope. Not according to process. I can come up with one.
Well, I think we've got stuff here in the minutes, and then take some time to form yours and we'll be okay with it. We can make a motion to remove agenda items we don't want to talk about, can't we, at the next
Yeah,
meeting?
that
Yeah.
you can.
So,
Yeah, no, actually, that specifically you can do. We could do just kind of a laundry list, and then you can also, if there's something that you want on an agenda, you can just make a motion over email and say, I'd like to make a motion that this be on the next agenda. And then as long as somebody else says second, it's on the agenda. Whether I want it on there or not as chair, doesn't matter. It's got to be on the agenda.
So if we have an agenda item in mind, we can email it to you and you can throw it on there. And that
Yeah,
result.
especially if it's clarification of this stuff. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just don't copy everybody else.
If it's something totally different,
Sure. Yeah, that's the diabolical power I have as chair. I can build the agendas. So I get to choose based on requests and all that stuff. As long as you trust me, I'll do my best. Okay. So yeah, that's actually the next action, is just send any agenda items. I definitely have stuff, but I want to give space. And that includes you, Gretchen. Like, if there are things that you're like, no, like I joined this board because there was a couple of things I really wanted to look at, and this is one of them. Like, please.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Public comment period. I see nobody dialed in. So I'm going to close public comment period. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. We're adjourned.